I caught a cold last weekend after the party in Huna, and I've been stuffed up and I can't tell. If you can't hear what you're saying, it can get embarrassing. Good morning. I got all my notes on here. I thank you for coming. I thank you for coming to How Do Our Clans Heal After Losing Our Children. Tlingit ayakhat, li Florendo ayakhat, slukakari ayakhat, shaka hit canoe prow house, alsek yakatat ayakhat, yeshit Raven House, 19 mile then 4 mile now down by the beach in Haines ayakhat. My mother is Kechne. Thanks, Mom, for coming. And my grandmother was, I don't have enough saliva in the back of my mouth, Segege, Emma Marks. My father was Tony Florendo, and my Philip from the Philippine Islands, and my grandfather was Willie Marks, Master Carver. I am Chukanedi Yeti of the Brown Bear House in Huna. I am Tlingit and Filipino, born and raised in Juneau. I thank you, Conference Committee, for including me on the agenda this year. I am in awe of the topics and the activities. Today, I wonder out loud if our clans will continue to celebrate births by giving newborns their names before or at birth. I wonder who the people in training are to become the next clan chief and the next clan mother. I wonder what our clans will look like in the future, and will we continue to exist and persist? I've been here before. In 2009, I discussed the fact that many children on our ICWA caseload don't have Tlingit names and don't know the name of their clan. In 2012, I was here to ask what questions we should be asking children and their parents about who their relatives are when we're looking for placements. We include clan in our definition of family. This year, I have one slide that will update you on the numbers of children in Alaska who've been removed from the parents' care and custody and placed in foster care. I'm here to suggest that we need to have a healing of our clans. I'm so at odds at what's happening to our children that I personally believe, this is my own belief, that we need to stop before we go further, and we need to have a healing of clans. We need to acknowledge that historical trauma has impacted us so significantly that we are losing our children. They are becoming lost to us, and our clans are shrinking. How many of you heard the phrase historical trauma? Oh, good. Wikipedia or Wikipedia, however you pronounce that word, says that historical trauma refers to cumulative emotional and psychological wounding exceeding over an individual lifespan and across generations caused by significant group traumatic experiences. As a sociologist, I know that cultures change, sometimes for the better and sometimes not for other reasons. I believe this is something that's been happening to us for generations. Historical trauma affects how we interact with each other and with the world. Historical trauma is having a devastating impact on our children as far as statistics go. I believe it is having a devastating impact on our clans, too. White Bison in Colorado says that uses the phrase multicultural trauma, multi-generational trauma. I can't read my writing. Which is based on shared experiences by American Indian and Alaska Native people of historic traumatic events like displacement, forced assimilation, language and culture suppression, and boarding schools, and it is passed down through generations. There is a sense of powerlessness and hopelessness associated with historical trauma that contributes to high rates of alcoholism, substance abuse, suicide, and other health issues. White Bison, the group in Denver, Colorado, was established by Don Coyas. He coined the term wellbriety and offers training to communities to provide alcohol treatment programs based on the Native American, American Indian experiences related to historical trauma that we have experienced for generations. If you look at Alaska statistics, we have high rates of high blood pressure and diabetes. I take a whole container full of meds on a daily basis to keep on an even keel. I used to weigh 150 pounds until I was told that I'm about borderline diabetic. It was really challenging for me to change my eating habits and my lifestyle. What are examples of historical trauma in Southeast Alaska? And these are just to name a few. These came into my head as I was typing this page. The U.S. Navy bombing of Rangoon. Children sent to boarding schools and homes. Aleut relocation to Southeast Alaska in World War II. Organized religions. Alaska was divided into 5 regions. Loss of traditional access to lands relied on for survival. In order for us to become U.S. citizens, we had to be able to speak English. At the Carlisle Institute, led by an Army captain, Richard Pratt, the boarding school in Pennsylvania, the idea was to breed out the Indian. This was in 1897. More than 100 years ago. Alaska was divided into various regions that allowed organized religions to come in and save us. We moved from clan houses through disaster or through other forceful means to housing that limited our occupancy to nuclear family units. You could live there only with the mother, the father, and the children in the unit. We have tribal members living all across the United States, some families outside for generations. Notice I did not include the introduction of alcohol and other substances. That's always a given. And substances and domestic violence continues to contribute to our ICWA caseload. Do any of you know what disproportionality is? Do you know? Excuse me. We are overrepresented in Alaska statistics. Child removal and placement with the Office of Children's Services, youth in the juvenile justice system, adults in the correctional system, high alcoholism and other substance abuse rates, youth suicide. According to the 2010 Alaska Census, Alaska Native American Indian populations, we were 14.8% of the state population, 7.9% of the Anchorage population, 14.9% of Southeast Alaska, and my favorite place, Juneau, we were 11.8% of the population. Disproportionality is when in the U.S. Census, American Indian Alaska Natives are 14.8% of the state's population, but the OCS statistics removing Native children from their families and placing them in foster care are a lot higher than their actual representation in the total population. As an aside, a few years ago, the U.S. Department of Justice was beginning to study the correlation between being a foster child and being a prison inmate. At the beginning, they were seeing that there is a correlation. And this is the slide that I updated for today. The 2012, 11, 10, and 9 were presented at previous presentations. But in 2013, 1,298 of the total 2,079 children in foster care in Alaska, we represented 62.4% of the kids in foster care. And we made up 14.8% of Alaska's population. That's disproportionate. In Southeast Alaska, as of September 2013, 121 of the 154 children in out-of-home placements or in OCS custody was 78.6%. I forgot what the number was for our percentage of the Southeast population, but that's still disproportionality. These are just statistics for children in foster care. What about the numbers of our people in kiddie jails or in the correctional systems? What about the thousands of people lost to us down south? How are they faring? We have a high out-of-state caseload in our department. The effects of historical trauma are reflected in the statistics. Our children and their families are suffering. Our people are grieving. I say again, historical trauma has affected us and our clans. And if our families are suffering, our clans most certainly are suffering too. Meanwhile, our people need their clans. Like Spock always said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. Our children need their clans. Our children need to know who they are and where they come from. How many of you saw the PBS series Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates a couple years ago? Oh, great series. I saw the ad on the PBS website and I had to buy it. The first sentence of the program description on the PBS website was a grabber for me. It was, quote, "Each of us has a basic desire to know who we are and where we come from." What are the results of historical trauma today? The big one for me is the interruption of the transmission of culture from one generation to the next. Tribal members who don't know who they are or where they come from. Children who don't have clan names. When I was growing up in Juneau, we kind of sort of had to create our own community with Tlingit women and Filipino men as our parents. Us kids were not accepted by the Tlingit community because we were only half, and were not accepted by the Filipino community because we were not pure. We created our own community. We are like sisters and brothers now, and always have been, because the close community that our parents created was so close. It's like we were, and we are, siblings. Very few Tlingits and Filipinos are married to each other because we're brother and sister. With their guidance, most of us are able to function in three worlds: the native, the Filipino, and the non-native communities. It has been good having such close community ties with those folks, but it also has its drawbacks. So my question is, how do we carry the clan system into the future? And this is a quote by Ernie Hillman. "I always wonder how we'll talk to our kids 50 years from now." I believe he said this at a Huna conference, clan conference a few years ago. It was a wonderful community event. I don't know if he said it at the clan conference or if I just caught it when we were in another meeting. But it stuck in my mind because I don't speak Tlingit. My mother and father, like good Americans, decided that we would only speak English because they wanted us to be successful in school. Do I regret not continuing when my mother was teaching me Tlingit a long time ago? You bet. Why did I stop? Because I repeated what she taught me to my Grandma Emma, and Grandma Emma laughed. I did not realize until I was way older that she was laughing from delight, and she was not making fun of me. I can't speak Tlingit, I can't speak Filipino, but we used to know what our parents were talking about when we overheard them. And we know the swear words too. What will our clans look like 50 years from now? What does balance really mean? How are clan culture and knowledge passed on to the next generation? I'm throwing down the gauntlet here. These clan conferences are great for sharing knowledge, and I really appreciate being a part of this. I heard a lot about the need for balance at the conferences and at funerals and at memorials. The Huna Clan Conference was very different from this. It had cultural sharing of 4 clan people there, how they do it in Huna. Huna is very different from the clan conferences I attended in 2009 and 2012. In Huna, everyone participated. Even the children showed how they're carrying on their culture and traditions in Huna. They were both the audience and the presenters. It was great. But now I challenge the organizers to consider my next page. Oops, sorry. Where are the women? We are matrilineal in structure. The clan mothers bring balance to the clans. But who is here today? Are there any clan mothers in the audience? If you are, could you stand or wave so that I can applaud you and thank you for being here? Mom! Thank you! I've been told that the Natla is just as important to the clan. She's the supermom of the clan, and she provides whatever support the clan leader may need when clan honor is at stake. She is there for the clan members, and this is no accident. The needs of the many. We derive our identity as human beings from our mothers. That's the way it's always been. But I have not seen the clan leaders consulting with the clan mothers before they take the stage when I've attended the previous clan conferences. Is there balance with the clan mothers being absent? I'm not talking about the balance being between eagles and ravens. We've heard about that. Balance is brought to the forefront at a funeral, at a memorial. But should not a gathering of this sort also show balance is still at the forefront, with the women being up there with the men? The women bring balance to the whole, completing the whole. Uh-oh, did I advance it? What does balance mean? I relied on a whole bunch of my technology to get this stuff. The thesaurus on my computer says, balance is equilibrium, stability, equalize, hold steady, keep steady. Is it also healthy? So how balanced are our clans today? My notes are on this one, and I can almost have to hold it up to read it. Used to be, we lived in multi-generational clan houses. The clan leader and the clan mother worked together, and clan members contributed to the whole. In his book, The Tlingits, George Emmons described clan houses, how they were organized and populated by the members. From what I've heard and read, the needs and health of the clan depended on the control and guidance of these leaders, the clan leader and the clan mother, along with the support of the members. Neither the clan nor the village could prosper without individual support and contributions from its members. Boys learned from their uncles, girls learned from their aunties. Everyone contributed to the health and well-being of the group, the needs of the many. How do I see it today? We no longer have control over our clan members. Children are now property of their parents, and we are disproportionately represented in our state statistics. The historical trauma we experienced in Southeast Alaska has severed the control that kept clan members in line and contributing to the needs of the many, as opposed to the needs of the one. Uncles and aunties no longer play a major role in the upbringing of the children. We've become so anglicized that no longer can we step in and tell a parent, "I'll take the kids for a while, come back when you're better." You can't do that anymore without a signed, notarized document that's good for only 1 year, and the parent can tear it up at any time. And if you can calculate, we once had children on our caseload whose great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, and the foster children were in foster care. So, that could be 80 years of separation from the clan. 4 generations already. All of us have unresolved grief. So, how will we talk to our kids 50 years from now? If we're losing future clan leaders and clan mothers, what will the clans look like? How will our clans function? In their book, can somebody say it out loud for me because I can't pronounce it? Ha-tu-wun Nagu Yis? Close, thank you. For healing our spirit. Richard and Nora Downhauer say it's possible and probable that the oratory will survive using the English language. That's good, because at this point in my life I have difficulty in even picturing how I could use metaphor, simile, and riddles in this presentation. I believe it's a given that speech making in the future will be in English. The challenge will be to be as brilliant as some of the speeches in this book, and to maintain the structure of the funerals and the memorials. Although my mother once said at a funeral, "We are the sockeye in the river, catching your tears as they fall into the river." And she said it in English, and it was brilliant. It's time to acknowledge that historical trauma has changed our clans. Our children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren are suffering, and our people are floundering. For our children and our grandchildren, it's time to heal. Also for our clans and for our futures as Tlingits and Haidas. The reason I'm here is because I'm afraid of what our clans will look like in 50 years, and I'm coming from a different perspective. This was not intentional, coming to you at 2 other clans' conferences to ask folks to become more involved with tribal families and children in foster care. Today I'm suggesting that the clan conference would be a logical place to hold a clan healing session so that we can acknowledge that all of us have been traumatized in the past, and the way we've reacted to historical trauma has caused us to let go of our children and grandchildren who need us to take on whatever the future holds for us from the Native perspective. Remember that those who came to Alaska took Captain Richard Henry Pratt's lead. The best way to change the Indian was to breed it out of him. We have many beautiful children who are all shades of the rainbow. Excuse me. Beautiful, beautiful children who are so proud to be Native. Guide them, groom them, help them to step. Thank you. Guide them, groom them, to step into the leadership roles when they are needed. How do we do this? We have to acknowledge that historical trauma has affected each and every one of us in one way or another, and it's done so. That it's tough for some of us to hold up our heads. We've been grieving for generations. Our clans need to have members who know what you all know today. Historical trauma has affected us in the way we interact with each other, in families, in our communities, and with the outside world. The historical trauma of removals by the BIA, men fighting in wars and not returning home or being traumatically affected by those wars, Eisenhower's relocation program of the 50s, all of these have affected us. Our grief has been felt throughout entire communities. What will our clans look like in the future? How will we conduct our memorials and learn to be the opposite clan when a family is grieving? What to do? Is it time to talk about the unresolved grief yet? My proposal is to hold a healing of clans ceremony at the next gathering. How to do it? Use the format, the memorial format that's described in the book. Pronounce it. To remove our grief. Don't have to tweak it a little, just so that it meets the situation. Our culture is not dead yet, but why can't we use the memorial format as a guide? Bring everyone together and acknowledge that the past has affected our clans and our families in drastically violent ways. We have unresolved grief. Let us, help us, remove the grief that was thrust upon us by historical trauma. Use the format of the memorial a one-day happening. Of course, everyone would have to keep their speeches very short to limit it to one day. Have each clan bring a list of names and locations of family members to the activity so we can acknowledge them too and keep them in a book. To end its impact, put together a list that describes all of those traumas. Have everyone who's present write down on pieces of paper, whatever, all of those traumas that they experience. They don't have to speak it out loud if it's too painful. Then burn them in a bucket for symbolic removal of those traumas. Again, we need these younger generations to carry on our culture and traditions into the future. And if we don't start now, when? And in order for us to do it in a healthy way, we've got to get rid of the baggage that we're all carrying. Our clan members need your knowledge, your wisdom, and your strength to bring them back into the protection of the clans. And you need your clan members to carry our culture and traditions into the future. Recently, I was at a meeting where I was asked how many relatives I had. I was caught by surprise, and I shrugged my shoulders and said, a lot. And then after me, he asked a young man, 20 years old, how many relatives do you have? Immediately, hundreds, he said. What a revelation. He knew more quickly than I did that each of us has potentially hundreds of relatives for each child in foster care. But the reality is, as I see it, that the clans need their children and grandchildren to carry our culture and traditions into the future for us to endure as Tlingits and Haidas. And I paraphrase Ikwa again. Because the reality for us is there is no resource that is more vital to the continued existence and integrity of Indian tribes and clans than their children. We must acknowledge our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren and carry on our culture and traditions. But first we have to get rid of the grief that has so greatly impacted all of us. Hope for the future lies in knowing who we are and where we come from. We must give those lost souls, and that's what they are, lost souls. We must give them back their pride of being Tlingit and Haida by bringing them back into the fold. We must help them to feel good and proud to be Tlingit or Haida. Maybe a formal healing of clans will get rid of some of the baggage that was thrust upon us way back when, so that the clans remain strong 50 years from now. Thank you. I hope I didn't offend anyone. I hope you all have safe journeys and good health. And I hope you'll have a healing of clans soon. And help our children, their families, and our clans heal. Thank you. I have my kabayong. I had a panel, but part of the panel had to work today. So we're here on our own. And I'd like to introduce Loretta Betty Marvin, who will introduce herself and contribute her experiences as she was growing up. And I'll let you introduce yourself, Betty. You want to come up and stand here or what? No, they'll question us together. I'm not getting up here for questions by myself. Oh, that is a nice microphone.
It's great.
Okay.
Heard you loud and clear.
I don't know how to turn it off.
Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to see everyone here. I wasn't really quite prepared, but I think I'll just, wing it and see. After listening to Lee, we just had a short time to meet because we both work, and so I'll introduce myself. Tlingit, Jinkosi, Yuchatuasag, Shangu Kedi, Ayachat, Filipino Yatki, Khatsati, Luka Khadi Dachkang. Everything that she was talking about, especially towards the end, is very emotional, especially for me. Actually, I'm here to let you know and I know many of you have experienced the same experiences that I have. When I was young, I remember we were always together, the family always gathered together. And at that time, our mothers did, even if they were married to Filipinos. And it seems, the Filipino side of the family, he always had to agree with what our mothers had to say. and we were raised traditionally. We weren't, able to speak the language, the Tlingit language or the Filipino, like Lee just mentioned, but we were taught. And we were taught how to put up our foods. We were taught our Tlingit names. Mine is Jinkusi. I have brothers and sisters. I know all their names, all their Tlingit names. And at that time, our parents would say, all you have to do is say your name. Don't ever brag about yourself or say anything that makes you look good. All you do is just say who you are and your Tlingit name, and they'll know who you are. They'll know where you came from. They instilled pride in us. And then later on, we went to school, and it was a whole different story. My first experience with boarding schools was Minifields, and what a traumatic experience that was. To be being belittled, punished severely, corporal punishment, and all the things that they did to our people. They'd stand some of our children in front, like the boys had to use dresses just to shame them. This was at Minifield's home. That's not too long ago. And the girls, if they wanted their hair cut, or they dressed them up like boys and ridiculed them right in front of everyone. So from then on, it went downhill. I was sort of ashamed to be, I was ashamed. I said, like Lee says, because we were half-breeds, the full Filipinos didn't want us around. And then on the Tlingit side, they didn't want us around either. And of course, the whites didn't want us at all. So, one of my sons says, Mom, I'm part Filipino, I'm part Tlingit, I'm part black, and to top it off, I'm a Catholic. He says, where can I go? But anyway, you understand where I'm coming from. And along with the corporal punishment and the belittling, there was sex abuse. And believe me, I was abused at a very young age. And this started in the schools, and so that was the beginning of my life. Okay, then I started school, and I went to the public schools. I was taken out of Minifield's home, and I would live back and forth between Juneau and Petersburg. And Petersburg is predominantly Norwegians. So you can imagine, especially with our Tlingit tempers, we just... Ethel Lund says, there's my rebel from Petersburg, so I was always fighting. I never did stop fighting. But anyway, in the school system, they did belittle us, especially, even the highly intelligent. We have many that I am so proud of. We have many leaders who are Tlingit, and the Tlingits. We have many that are leaders, and I'm so proud. But in the school system, the teachers would belittle us anytime they get a chance. They say, they'd ask a question, and we'd raise our hands, hoping, and then they'd say, we give our answer, and they'd say, well, yeah, that's close, but not quite. And then the non-native, a white child would raise their hands, and the teacher would say, you got it exactly right. I'm so proud of you. How do you think it made us feel? That is very, very sad, to have children that have to cringe every time they turned around, and that comes from all sides. But let me see now. Okay, it was in my teen years that I started drinking, and later on drugging, and I felt a lot, less than a person. As a matter of fact, being raised in the Catholic religion, and that was quite an experience within itself. But sad to say, I felt they made us feel like nothing, like we were nothing. So what happens? I went into a world of my own for drinking, and then eventually drugging, and I thought, I went down south, I traveled all over, I thought, I gotta find myself, who am I? I mean, I don't even know who I am. And so I went amongst the blacks, because I thought I was superior to the blacks, because of how we were raised, how the non-natives told us they were, less than humans. So I thought, well, I could relate to that. They feel the same way about us, so then I decided I roamed around, and I've had so many experiences, and I'm sure, and you'd be surprised how many people I ran into on my travels that were from Alaska and from different schools. I went to Mini Fields, I went to Pius X Mission, I went to Mount Edgecombe, and I've had a lot of friends that went to Wrangell Institute, and all of us experienced the same type of life. And it wasn't surprising that all of us were alcoholics, and we all seemed to understand each other, Okay, when I got older, I started to turn my life around. Of course, everyone knows that I had 10 boys and 1 girl. And that lifestyle with trying to raise all these children. But I did get a lot of help from our people. In the villages, all the people will gather together, and they call, your son is down on the float, you better check on him, he might fall overboard. All the Tlingit families, we took care of each other, we helped each other. What a beautiful way to live, right? It's so beautiful. Our Tlingit ways and our traditions and our culture is so beautiful. I mean, if there was any disagreement, they'd have to get together and settle it. Like Lee was saying, the balance, there was always balance, and so in my adult years, I started getting interested in learning more about who I am. And I started doing beadwork, and started to try to find songs that I could learn. And all these kids, well, of course, with all my children, there's going to be a lot of other children in the house. So these girls came to my house and they saw me doing beadwork, and they said, "What are you doing?" I says, "Well, I'm trying to learn how to bead." And so they took an interest in it, and then they started coming to visit me, so I started cutting out little patterns for them and giving them some beads. And this one young lady, who is now a great artist, Ishan, she came over, and I gave her, some supplies, materials, and then she came over the next day. She had tears in her eyes, and I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "The headband that I made, that we finished together," because I put it on her head, and I says, "Now you're a beautiful Tlingit princess." And she was so proud. Ishan, we were all poor, So just to make her feel good and let her know who she really is. You're not anyone to spit on. You're somebody. And she said the teacher told me, take that thing off your head and put it around your neck where it belongs. And she said everyone in the class started laughing. They all started laughing. And so, crazy me, not knowing what to do, I filed charges against the school for discrimination. What had happened, I got everybody in an uproar. I says, we've got to defend our children, we've got to do this, and I had about maybe 13, 15 followers, all of them. And then when the newspaper came out, there was only me standing at the meetings. I said, where did everybody go? So I lost the battle, but I won the war. I lost the battle. In the newspaper, they said, they were writing, this here woman who has no morals, who is, like an alcoholic, a drunken mother who is raising her children. They had all kinds of ugly things to say, but after the session was all over with, and I go downtown, and the teachers that I filed charges against would be coming down the street, and then they'd stop and look at me, and they'd look in the store windows like they were window shopping. They were ashamed. They cut our girls' hair, long, beautiful hair, and they told them, that's another reason why I filed charges. Because when they came to me, I said, what happened to your beautiful hair? I said, teacher said that it didn't look right, that I have to. So they had the, short haircut. And so those are the things and that's when I really started thinking. I says, Betty, you're going to have to start doing something. You got all these children. You're going to have to let them know, that they're not nobodies. They're not less than any other children. I remember a teacher slapped one of my sons so hard that she broke a blood vessel in his nose. And the other one of my sons, they never told me until they grew up. I said, why didn't you tell me? And they says, we didn't want you to go to jail, Mom. And I says, well, that would have been okay. But anyway, one judge did tell me after a discrimination fight, and of course it was in a bar, so, and this magistrate says, oh, Betty, what am I going to do with you? And I says, well, you should tell that woman, the long blonde hair, to quit trying to put us down because we're Tlingits. And he says, well, I can't send you to jail. No one will take on all your children. I said, well, anyway. Then I came to Juneau, and just to make a long story short, I came to Juneau. And this is where I started getting help. The Tlingit and Haida Central Council took me under wing. It was 1976, I believe it was. And that, what is that, over 30 years ago? Yeah. I've seen a lot of our gals that came on as youngsters. Francine is one. She was a feisty one. She always working, yeah, still is. Lee, Andrea Cadiente. I mean, a lot of them, they all blossom into beautiful leaders. All are women. Anyway, I worked in between Petersburg and Juneau with Central Council. And we had our dance group that had started. Then the children started. They even incorporated the some of the cultures in the school system, and believe me, some of the Norwegians were happier to be, chosen as Indians, and then a lot of the Indians were, they danced real hard, and, I says, but at our classes, what I did, one of the children said to me, they says, what do we have to be proud of? They just look down on us. They always call us a bunch of Siwashes, and I turned and I looked at this here. I'll call him my grandchild, my grandson. And I said, do you know who you are? Do you know where you came from? He said, no. I said, and he was very white with real blue eyes and blonde hair. And he said, I said, the clan you're from, you should be very proud of. And this is what I've been trying to tell a lot of our people. I says, the clan you're from, Sakwedi, has many, many leaders that you have to be proud of. I said, your great-grandmother is one, Amy Hollingstead. Your grandmother, Gertrude Lyons. Your uncles, Dick Keto. And there was a gentleman from Cake, I can't think of his name, soft-spoken. He was one of the Sakwe leaders. No, the other, he sang, very eloquent person. No, Clarence, he was outspoken. He was another fighter like me. No, it was a gentleman. I know you know who he is. And so, anyway, I says, you have many, many leaders to be proud of. And you're Sakwedi. You got to be proud of that. You come from the big killer whale house. And he was just really, he thought, wow, I am somebody. And then, while we were going through the school year, he started saying, well, Auntie Betty, you know how them white people are. And I says, oh, my gosh, I don't want to do reverse discrimination here, But and here he is sitting there with big blue eyes and blonde hair, And so I had to reverse it. I says, you have to be proud of whatever you are. And check it out. I says, the Norwegians have a good history. And that's when I started teaching, what we got to be proud of who we are. And I guess I want to read something to you that I was really honored with. I hope I can see it. I can't see very well. But anyway, I had the honor of one of my sons, Daku Dane, wrote me a poem, and I'm quite sure all of our people will relate and understand and be proud of this. A Shangukedi named Jinkusi, that's who I am. A T-bird with eagles to spare. She raised her own clan as woman and man, being fierce as a big mama bear. She taught them to hustle by using their muscle and keeping their brains in the balance, teaching her youngsters to live without hunger by using their God-given talents. Through poor some would say, she showed them a way by taking them down to the shore. Subsistence abound her family found. They're broke, but far from being poor. They kept from being poor with no money in store. by sharing the fat of the land. From beaches and woods they gathered their goods, with treasures like cockles and clams. And seaweed was racked, both ribbons and black, then sweetened with salt and ground. The ribbon was candy and black seaweed handy for any true Indian chow. When the tide was low, it was time to go, for steamers and gumboots don't wait. To sea in the night, they'd bring their own light, no matter the time of the day. And saving one's life comes down to a knife to fight off the dangers, she said. Getting pinned to a rock by an octopus lock, with tides rising over your head. Yes, legends were many, and stories plenty, like spirits who'd grant you a wish. The halibut dreams of lack from the sea, or spit in the mouth of a fish. The good luck lady would nurse her baby with magic the clan understood, and all did their best to not be possessed by kushtakas roaming the woods. I sure was teaching them a lot. I didn't realize. Okay, the forest was here for berries and deer. The forest was here for the bear. They'd beat on the trees with branches and leaves and let them know they were there. The beach turned to gold when filled up with roe, brought by the herring in the spring. On kelp and on branch, this lifelong romance spoke of what happiness brings. The sea gave them more to fill up their store, when shrimp and the crab filled them up, with silvers and reds and king salmon heads, and stink eggs to clean out your guts. There's deer meat. Okay. Oh, there's deer meat and moose and tongue from the goose. There's grease from the fat of a seal. There's dry fish for weeks and halibut cheeks, and Dungeness makes a good meal. Not all food was here from the earlier years, but soon became Indian food, because everyone likes potatoes and rice and sailor boy pilot bread too. Food is one source for checking her course, an example of what she stood for. The wealth in her heart had taught us the art of being broke but never being poor. Her real wealth begins with family and friends, with richness in music and song. The strength from the love is what she's made of, with strength that we'll always lean on. The Jinkosia name simply explained, hands that make dreams come true. A story passed down and shared all around for children and grandchildren too. And tears came to my eyes. My son dedicated this to me. Thank you.
So, does anyone have any questions, or would they like to? Someone would like to share something? I can't. Besides being long on the tooth and hard of hearing, I know it. Is that you, Lenora? Okay. You'd like to come up to the. Come up.
Geez, that light's bright. Good morning. I want to thank you for, being here, and I agree with that there needs to be healing, and I also agree that our children need their clans. Our clans need our children. It's a relationship that our culture needs, and I was writing down notes. Can't read my notes without my granny gear on, though. So working in Indian child welfare, there's a common thread that we do see. It's very apparent that our parents that don't have the culture, that aren't involved, that don't have the knowledge, they get involved with the child welfare system. My knees are knocking. I'm looking at the director of our program. That there is a lack of cultural knowledge, there's a lack of involvement, and if they don't know where they come from, if they don't know their clan, they're lost. They're lost. If we can help them find their clan, if we can help them find where they come from, that's a beginning. And I shared yesterday that the moms that are doing better, that are doing well in the child welfare system, they're the moms that have found out who they are and where they come from. And it's a start. And once we get them going, it's up to them to take the next step, oftentimes, because, we're still trying to help other families. In my experience as a community family service worker in Aingun, I didn't have anybody on my caseload that was actively participating in the culture. I didn't have people that were in the dance group that were on my caseload. So, those protective factors, the culture and the dancing. And I agree that dancing is not what our culture is about, but the people that were actively part of the group were not coming to see me in my office. A couple days ago, Alan Zuboff was telling a group of us that it's up to us to protect our culture. And I believe him, and I heard that throughout the years from him, and I never really fully understood. But I understand better now, and something that helps me understand that is when I was with a group of people and they were talking about education and how to make sure that education is enhanced in the communities. I think that education is somebody else's standard. I believe very strongly that education is important, but it's somebody else's standard. If we're talking about somebody who lives in the village, that wants to live in the village, that appreciates the village life, we need to encourage that, because education, there's two different types of education: practical education in the village and education outside of the village. I was also sharing that I have a 9-year-old grandson, and I sit with him and I help him do his homework, and he's always complaining, "I hate homework." And I keep telling him, "Well, I want you to be smart. I want you to succeed." But he has 5 rifles, and that makes me proud, because he knows the responsibility of a rifle. He knows the responsibility of hunting and being outside. He knows that, there are things that you need to do when you're out hunting and fishing. That makes me proud. But when he gets older, I want him to have the choice. So I really stress education with him. Really, my knees are knocking. I think that culture And I already said this, but culture is more than just dancing, and it's more than just being part of a clan. I think that being part of a clan is a huge responsibility. It's not just knowing your name, it's not just knowing your house, but when we're part of a clan, we're there for everybody else. Sometimes we stand opposite of our people that cry. That's a responsibility, because Alan Zuboff said one time, it's like a savings account. One of these days, the people that you stand and face are going to be standing and facing you. So it's a huge responsibility. I don't know how many of you have looked up the Tlingit, Haida and Tsimshian genealogy. Somebody mentioned this before. Kenneth runs that. That's a huge resource. That's so valuable. And I think that if we were all to contact Tlingit and Haida, enrollment would be a little upset with us, but if we all contact them and share our clan, or our clans, our family relationships, our house names, that would help us in our research, because we do work with a lot of families that don't know where they come from. So if you get the chance, don't tell them I sent you. Tell them Francine sent you. Please, go to Tlingit and Haida. Go to enrollment and let them know, this is the house that I come from. These are the people that I'm related to, because one of these days, one of your descendants might be coming to us. And we might be able to help them reconnect, and that's so important. It is just the first step, but it's an important step. And I do thank you for being here. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm here because I'm enjoying what I heard this morning. An advocate for caring for the children. And I think we have a start with these conferences that gives an opportunity to gather together and being able to share stories and the needs of our people. And what I enjoy hearing is highlighting the clans. It's not a political thing. It's who we are, what we are. I'm not here to grandiose or saying that I want to hear myself speak. But I think it takes a lot of guts to get up before our people. Because when you speak in front of your own people, they're our biggest critics. But it's important enough for me to come before you. I grew up in an orphanage. But you know what? I wasn't an orphan. I grew up because our community and my parents were ashamed that I was speaking Tlingit. It was that time where the language was being suppressed. And so that's the product I come from. And after I came back from college, and I stepped it up because as a young person, the elders taught me well. And the last few years of college, I could hear their voices. And it was difficult to identify. And I wasn't going crazy. It was just that I was lonesome for my home. And being lonesome wasn't just coming back home, it was the lonesomeness was not able to listen to our elders because their voices was caring, always telling you stories, teasing you, to make sure that you had a sense of belonging. And I thought to myself, I needed to get a steady job from fishing. And so I took a job at Mount Edgecombe. And the pay wasn't really huge, but I thought a retirement looked good. And then my own peer got jealous that I was going to get the top job in that school, in my department. So I thought, this is not right. I don't want my people feeling bad about saying that they worked many years. They needed that promotion. They understood the system. So I walked away and took a job at Alaska Lumber and Pulp. It was quite rewarding because my knowledge of operating equipment and such, and being good with people, I became a foreman in my department. And so when my mother-in-law was ridden with cancer, I walked away from that job to come to Juneau. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I took a job with City and Borough. And then they recommended that maybe I might work with the school district, and I did. I thought I did a great job, and so Tlingit and Haida hired me in the education department, mainly because I was good with people, I was good with students, and were able to evaluate whether they were destined to go to Voc Tech, specializing, or going to higher education. And to me, that paved the way of caring for our people. I almost got fired from my department for funneling people to the pipeline. I helped design a program where we accumulated the talent in Southeast Alaska, the world of work. And all we did was we handed surveys out to all the villages. And the calls started to come in, and they said, John Martin promised us jobs. Why are we not being sent up to the pipeline? And all we did was do a survey. So I was called in the office. After we funneled so many people up on a pipeline, and the morning that I was being read out, said, Martin, who authorized you to send people to the pipeline? I said, no one, boss, no one. I did this as in-kind service. Since I was accused in saying that I owed them, I thought to myself after I did my job, all my paperwork, I said, I did what I could to make them contact important people up on a pipeline. He was still reading me out when Ray Paddock Jr. was our president at the time. He walked into our section and said, who do I owe this to? He was shaking a check. Who do I owe this to? And my boss looked at, he said, I have an $85,000 check here from Spud Williams on Alyeska. Then my boss said, he put his arm around me and he said, John did this work. In evaluation, what happened was the Southeast workforce was the best workforce we had on Alaska, building the pipeline. It isn't that I want to pat myself on the back. I'm a caring person. When I left Tlingit and Haida, I had close to 3,000 hours comp time. I walked away. And my working with the school system on Edgecombe and Juneau School District, it was somewhat understanding that maybe I could do something for our kids. They didn't need to be Tlingits, they were students. They were non-natives that couldn't handle the pressure in the school system. I helped them. Today they still call me Mr. Martin, even Mount Edgecombe, during my AFN visits. I told them, you know, you don't need to call me Mr. Martin. And they told me, he says, yes, we do. Because you'll always be Mr. Martin to us. To me, I share the story, not because trying to elevate how great I am. I'm not. I'm an average person. I'm a clan house leader. I know the language. I know the system of our people. What is said this morning is so valuable that we need to hear from all the clans, wherever they may be in Anchorage, Fairbanks, or wherever. These clans should start showing the care to their children. If our language is going to survive, they also need to work through the culture and to show who they are and what was destroyed from us, what was taken from us. And so, just maybe through this clan conference, it's one of the mechanisms that I think is valuable. We need to put the pride back into our children through the clan system. Show them we care. The mechanism by sharing and letting them know we care is telling them stories about our clan and how our forefathers brought us up to where we're at today. And we need to demonstrate that. You don't all need to be parents, but you need to know your history, your clan, and be able to keep a foot in the door and say, and try to learn the language. That means that you care about your heritage. We don't need to be embarrassed about the criticism. I hear a lot of criticism. Oh, that guy thinks he's a fluent speaker because he can say Gunachish. You know what? That's a start. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to care and demonstrate the sharing. Caring for, it's not just for us. It's so to perpetuate the understanding of caring. That's a foundation of the culture and the clans. So, to me, I stand before you just to deliver a message. I would recommend that maybe the next sharing of tribal clan conference, that maybe there would be a segment of the program that the clans would come together and that we would highlight what is important by each clan, whatever they may be. And I just hope that there be a segment for the children, what would be important, and how we are taking a step forward, not just for ourselves, but if we as adults take the right steps, our children will understand, they'll feel the importance that we highlight why our clan survived for 10,000 years or longer. It wasn't an accident. Our people cared. They were respectful to each clan, the Raven and Eagle. We're not in competition between the clans, but we try to highlight the importance of understanding and caring for one another The clans and the tribes are actually the foundation of respect. So I hope that if we make sense on one comment coming from me, I understand, because growing up in a boarding school, I understood what racism is and bullying. Bullying is because most of our children experience this because they don't want the success. They're afraid that our students, our indigenous students, are going to be highlighted with a 4-point GPA, that they will go on to college and pretty soon our Tlingit, Haida, Tsimshian, and indigenous people of Alaska will be the leaders and ruling in the area of education and progress. I say to you, let's not be afraid to maximize the intelligence of our children. And the only way it's going to happen is we can't bully have our children being bullied. To say that there is a place in a classroom so they will make progress. Our kids used to be punished because they actually carved their initials in a desk, going back to old school. They were punished for that. And what the children are saying is, this desk belongs to me. That's why they carved their initials in a desk. How simple is that? And it continues. It's still happening, folks. But we don't need to be vindictive. The way around it is, the responsibility is to us, to our parents, to our kinship, to our clans. So let's work together and help us understand for the sake of our children. Thank you.
Uncle, could you stand with me here? Sure. And Danny. Paul, would you stand with me? Okay, stand with me. My name is Bob. My name is Kadada. I went to a meeting yesterday and I was kind of disappointed and I was frustrated. I want to thank Lee and Betty for allowing this time to speak. And we sat out there, we heard your cry. We're standing here as Hitsati's spokespersons. We understand our women, the Natlas, our sisters, are being hurt and mistreated and abused. And it falls to our children. And it saddens us. Yes, we need to give them names. We have to show them who they are. And this is why we're standing here. We heard your cry. And we don't want to give it up. We want to fix it and heal it. We need the time to be set aside for the Hitsatis, the Natlas, to come together so we can figure out what we can do and hold hands and fight for our children and our clan. At the next conference, or even sooner, it needs to be done. But if there's any other Hitsatis out here, and if they would like to stand with us, please come up and stand with us now. Because I think this is a real cry. The raven is crying, the wolf is crying, and we need to answer it. We're trying to figure out what the problem is. The problem is, to me, is we have too many recognition of organizations that are stepping up and taking the Hitsatis and the tribes' roles. It's not that we're going to knock them down or push them aside. We need them. We need to organize. The reason why I say this, I listened and I partially read the Constitution of our brother in Canada and how they work together. And they're only 18 years old. And we need to work together, corporation, village corporation, A and B, and all the clans. We need this to strengthen us, to help our sisters, to help our mothers, to help our uncles. We need this. And I hope this cry doesn't go unheard, and I hope it keeps on echoing in our minds that we have to do something. Not today, not tomorrow. When then? And when I sat with Jerry, your brother, Andy, we had a lot of discussions on these things. Some people say why I wasn't in the trench. I was working just like everybody else. We have to feed our family. Now I'm retired, but I'll be here, and I'll be working hard with my clan and with the other clans, with the other organizations, to help do something, to improve our way of life. Not subsistence, our way of life. We need to be strong. We've got to make sure our arrows are pointed in the right direction. We got to make sure we send the right leaders. If each one of us have to speak for ourselves, then let it be, but let us be heard. Ganesh ho ho.
Thank you. I stand here in my uncle's spot. He's from Angu and I'm from the Bear tribe. My uncle Yeshwanax, he's the Hitsaati, and he always sends me to these things to be his eyes and his ears. And like my brother Robert said, Bob, we hear your cry. Ikwa is under attack. The very meaning of sovereignty is under attack. United States Congress is not your friend. They're your enemy. They want to strip you of everything and make you one of them. And that's the reason why our children are being lost. And she talks about memorial trauma. Well, if you look back, ANCSA's trauma. They've taken away our rights to have land. They've taken away our rights to have identity. They've taken away our clan power through legislative moves. So we have to sit back and look at really what do we need today? What we need today is we need to stand by ourselves like our ancestors did. And their true meaning when they went after ANCSA was not to be incorporated into corporations. They were to give you an identity and let you hold on to that for the rest of your life. I remember 50 years ago when he says, how do you talk to your children 50 years from now in the future? Hashuka. I remember back when 50 years ago, I was 7 years old. They weren't talking about we want to be corporations. We want everybody to take our children and to send them somewhere else. That we want to relocate all our people so that our existence disappears like a puff of smoke. Up in the AFN, they said, this is where the power lies. The power lies within the clan. In our culture too, our culture says, keep politics away from it if you want it to survive. So we're caught between a catch-22 system that begs for you to exist as a sovereign person, for you to stand up and say, I am Tlingit, I am Haida, I am Tsimshian, I am Aliyah. 225 recognized tribes, not 12 regional corporations. That's forced entity, that's assimilation. ICWA is a foothold that we hold in hopes that we can at least mandate where our children live and how they are raised. It's under attack. We're losing that. They're gonna meet on it in Washington, D.C. this year, and they want to do away with it. They want to do away with a lot of things. You know, I'll mention an example of I have 9 children. I have 9 grandchildren. I was raised with 9 brothers and 5 sisters. And I suffered just like everybody else. But we fought to remain strong. I'm raising my grandson now because ICWA allowed me to. And I didn't have to wait for somebody to say, well, we got to see what the judge says. I walked up there and I took my child out of that house, my grandchild. I said, that's my grandchild. You have no rights over him. You want, call the cops, call whoever you want. I'm taking him. And that's how I handled that situation. And that's how you have to handle your life today. You got to be sovereign. Think sovereign. Don't think like corporate structure, infrastructure. Don't think like the Tlingit and Haida infrastructure mandated by federal funds. They're building a tribal house up in my father's land with federal funding. You can't have a real fire because that's against federal regulations. Step away from them. Give them back their money. That's our land. Down there at Crazy Horse Monument, federal government says, we'll give you $50 million to complete that. They turn around and says, keep your money. Keep your regulations. This is about us standing up for who we believe we are. And that's what we need to do with our children. That's what we need to do with our clans. See, we all have set places within the Tlingit culture and the Tlingit tradition. You know, subsistence, they can't even define subsistence, and that's not even in our vocabulary. Traditional hunting and fishing. If you think about everything that they've done from Public Law 280 to ANCSA to relocation IRA, what they're trying to do is to make us disappear like smoke. My little son came home from, he's 21 now, but he came home from middle school. He says, Dad, Can is alive and well. I says, Can? What is Can? He says, K-A-N, Dad, like KKK. Only thing is for the Indians. It's kill all natives. A group of kids in the schools have set up a group and they call themselves K-A-N. And I thought about it for a little bit and I was wondering, what am I going to say to my child? And this is what I told him. You go back and you tell them that you're living proof that they are failures. They have failed to eradicate the natives from this land. And if we stand together and give back the power to the people and give back our land, I know for a fact that all the schools all over Southeast Alaska was donated by tribal clans. Build a school here so you can teach my children. We don't have that power no more. Corporation says, oh, we'll stewardship this for you. Well, take good care of it. 40 years later, we still have nothing to stand on. Do away with them. Stand up for who you are. I know I have. 37 years as a heavy equipment operator, I've walked amongst everybody there, and I tell them right off the bat, I'm a Quady brown bear. I'm a full-blooded Tlingit. My Tlingit name is Kawutasin Kudenaha Kajiktakina. Yes, I can tell you what that means, but what does it mean to you? They could never give me an answer. I know who I am. They don't know who they are. So they want us to become like them. Don't know who you are. And that's what Lee was saying. Give these children identities. Take back our power. They are in a preliminary position right now, a judicial program right now that handles our children. Don't give it to the state OCS. don't proxy out our children. I can stand on the soapbox and scream and holler for the rest of the day, and I got to give it up right now because it's too emotional. Thank you.
Ishmael. I'd like to have Lee and Betty stand over here. You said to Aka over here. Lee. Grandma. It's my grandma. Tlit Kwe. My mom's mom. And Betty. Over here. Betty, can you stand next to her? And have your son stand with you. Chade khanua khunki. Akhishas chukanedi. Chokhatas chukanshaw. Chokhlis kohashangu kedi. Kankiyan kagwantan. Tutakwedi. Wushkitan. Taklawedi. Kankiyan yakhyistiha. Chokta kanuku tekwedi. I'd like to ask my grandfather's people to come up here too. George and your daughter, Kwashki Kwan, and our adopted daughter over here. Tluknakhadi Kusiku. Daklawedi clan leader, I saw him walk in here. Is he standing? Hashuka'a Kao. Hasahe ha'itwiltun. Those that are before us. My Dakanuku mentioned Hashuka earlier. Ya hasaki hajiwu. Hathiko hasakiyahe. The names that we carry are our ancestral names. Achawe Yadu Hascha Hashuka Kau. That is why your ancestors are standing before you right now, and you are all our ancestors who are sitting in front of us. It is a strength once you understand this. Nakitlan Hagu Hayinhan, my grandpa. I'd like to speak it in Tlingit, but I know and realize that there are among us who, not to their fault, not to our fault, not to our ancestors' fault, but the change that we're enduring and trying not to change, and I don't think we're changing. We're standing our ground. And I really appreciate what my grandma was talking about, and my other grandma, Shangu Kesha, and her son standing next to her, shows an interest of our people. And I want to be sure that we talk about our ancestors. I was just reading in Nora's book there, Woven in Song, about my dad. Him witnessing one of the boys, because they were speaking Tlingit, they put his head in a toilet bowl with stuff in there still, and almost killing him because he was Tlingit. We're a powerful people. It's known that when a man is afraid of something, they attack it, right? But it's known too when we're pushed back, we fight back. When push comes to shove, we stand up to the challenge. These ladies here, the ball has been rolling downhill for a long time. And these ladies stepped up to the challenge and trying to hold that big ball from rolling down. And our ancestors are saying, do you hear our voice? Do you hear us? We don't want you to forget who you are. We don't want you to forget your grandchildren, their children. There's a clan leader, he needs to come up here. Stand with us. We need to be recognized and seen so that when Lee sees these individuals, you have a responsibility. John is a clan house leader. Because we do have a responsibility. You might say, have you taken up that responsibility? I have my son here, Elijah. Could you stand with your auntie? I love the way my family loves my children. It makes me feel good. I love the way my sister loves her Kalku, her brother's son. And I love the way my niece loves my children. I see your son Jeffrey. Hey, Jeffrey! He looks at me, hey, Uncle Paul. And I see Carmela's boy, Ronnie. Hey, Grandpa! Puts his arms around me. Why am I saying that? It's a cultural value that we understand, that we recognize each other. When you see your children, if you don't know them, give them a nod if that's all you can do. Recognize them. Some of them don't feel like they're seen because when they're in the school system, they don't pay attention to them. So recognize them, right? Hello? I see little kids, they recognize me. I can't remember all those little kids in the school, but they go, oh my goodness, what that does to my heart. And it's a responsibility to make them feel like they're important. And wave back. And I tell these little kids, I think I'm at the position now that I can call you grandchildren. So they call me, you can call me Grandpa. Making it personal. Because when I go into the school, these kids are ready. Not only our Tlingit kids, but all the kids. Wanting to listen to our stories. Wanting to hear our language. There's one lady that works with us, her son came up and asked his mom, Mom, am I Tlingit? And she says, no, son. Oh, he felt so bad. How do I become a Tlingit? What I'm saying is you're important to many, many, many people that we don't realize. The voices we hear is the cry of our ancestors, the cry that they've had from generation to generation. It baffles me so much that when I read the stories Nora and Richard printed and look at the words and begin to try to understand those words, how intelligent our people were and are. We are still intelligent. We see more college graduates in our people than we have in many years. I have a son in Gonzaga. Straight A's. They tried to put a label on him when he was in grade school. Right there, they put a roadblock on him. Well, my son is a fighter like his mom and his dad. Bam, knocked down that wall. Came out shining, got straight A's. One day he came home and talked to his mother. Mom. He said, what, son? I'm the only Tlingit in my classroom. Oh, okay. And she said, and I got all A's. What I'm saying is, you can do it. We can do it. Our children can do it. Because our ancestors done it. We aren't here just by chance. It's what was instilled in us from our ancestors, which gives us that fight and that right to be here on this earth and to be here in Southeast Alaska. As I heard my brothers over there speaking, we're not trying to take it back, we're just trying to let them know it's ours. It's our ancestors. But we are the caretakers of this land to make sure that it's taken care of. To make sure our children are taken care of and that this land is taken care of. All nations have a trust responsibility, an environmental responsibility to make sure that they do not hurt the rights of the people and take the rights away from their grandchildren. This is a government in worldwide belief. We don't hear too much about that. But if there's things happening in the environment, the people of the earth, of the world, have a responsibility to make sure it doesn't take away from their children or grandchildren. But these companies are so rich and so conniving, they word it as if we're not really hurting the environment. You've heard that, right? We're not really hurting it, but look at the mine over here, Chedwell Mine. That gravel over there is so contaminated, but they won't tell anybody. DIA, Douglas Indian Association, went and tested that ground, and they just went in barely a foot. And they said it's off the record. It's so contaminated. But I just wanted to share with you that we hear Grandma calling. We hear our ancestors calling. Let us stand up and let us step up to the plate. Let us do what we can do. You go to a creek, you say, well, I don't know anything about it. I'll let you know one thing. I've been to many creeks, but I'm finding out how many relatives we really have. We have a lot of relatives. Our connection is pretty much with all the communities. So what does that say? We stand together as a family with a central goal to save our children, our grandchildren. My daughter's making me a grandpa. That's exciting. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What can I teach her? You know, my boys are already excited about the child coming and what they're going to teach him. Him, they say him, I guess. But she says her. The mama says them, because she's a twin. Her mother is a twin. So thank you so much for your kind attention. And I believe my sister Nora, I'd like to ask my sister Nora to say something. And then also, and they said it's time for the next session, so we got seconds.
I'll just say a couple words and hand it over to Nathan. Our house, our clan house, it's a legal house, legal through the United States law. So we have members on the board to watch this house. That's up in Haines. Austin Hammond, who is our deceased relative, decided to make the house legal.
Chief, you know, first of all, what I want to do is thank Lee and Betty for doing the presentation that they did. And I kind of fall into the same category as I think Betty was in Tennessee at Superior Packing Company when my stepmom passed away, drowned, going over to Tennessee Springs on a boat. And then I got sent to Wrangell Institute. And in Wrangell Institute, in a few occasions of going through the trauma that I did, it was hard. When Christmas came about, it was hard. And you didn't know anybody in that school. And to not being able to speak the language, there was also the Eskimos that couldn't speak their own language in that school. And that's the way they lived. And so everything was very strict, and I was restricted to my bed. But that's part of the story in that, in fact, you didn't know where you came from. You didn't know where you belonged. And around Christmas time is stand underneath the water and have it drip on your head. And there was hardly any happiness. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't mention anything. Established friends later on. But I want to say this, that what she talked about is very important. We look at those kind of pictures and we talk about the clans and how important that is. And when I think about our clan, and I didn't even realize what clan I belonged to when I left for Wrangell Institute. And then gradually this started to come into play. Even the language was really hard for me. And so in being able to speak our own language I tried a little bit when I was living with Jack David in Haines. I stayed with my uncle Chester and Johnny Smith in Cake. But when it came to Jack and Elizabeth, the problem and the issues that I felt at that particular time was that when I tried just a little bit, I wasn't doing it right, they'd laugh at me and make fun. I thought that's what they were doing. And so I says, oh, never mind, forget it, just. But when we think about how important being able to encourage, like John has been saying, just try to encourage, rather than, I did this with my wife. My wife is Caucasian, and she wanted to learn Tlingit language, and so she said a few words, and I kind of chuckled a little bit, and she quit altogether. And so that whole aspect of the language, as important as it is, We have the opportunity today to be able to pick up on the language, and my son has been teaching through the computer. He does the laptop, and they have the laptop, and my grandson is learning how to count to 10. And so how important that is. My son, when he was growing, I was doing a little talk in New York, and somebody said, well, what do you do about the white people that are doing the art? I said, you know, my son was a little boy. And he said, I said, Stephen, what are you? He said, I am half Tlingit Indian and half Caucasian. What does that mean? That means that I can't be discriminatory towards anybody that is white. I can't be discriminatory towards anybody that is black. I need to be able to recognize them as human beings that have their own issues like I have my own issues. I'm an artist. I do carving. I do things that was taught to me from the start by a fellow by the name of Stayat. And his name is Ted Lawrence. Ted Lawrence was handicapped in a way. He had one leg, amputated leg, and he had also had tuberculosis, and they took out one of his lungs, but he liked to hunt, liked to fish, liked to drink, liked to talk, liked to joke, did all kinds of things. But, you know, where do we take all this? We know that there are people amongst us who have those type of abilities to be able to look at something, analyze it, and being able to critique somebody else's work, and being able to carry it on. Well, the language is one of those aspects that has been kind of, for me, being that I'm married to a Caucasian, then all the communication is more English than Tlingit. So I haven't had the opportunity of being able to practice that, and when it comes to doing that, I see that I'm lacking. But I still realize that, hey, I'm Tlingit. I should know all that stuff. I should be able to learn it if I haven't learned it yet. And here I am, 75 years old. I am hitting the top and going over the hill. You know? And so when I think of these little talks, how important they are to try to encourage our people, try to encourage those that are young. And you know, I want to say this for the last, is that Austin said only one thing, and I thought the mindset that he had in being able to not only express it, but show it, is that this is for my grandchildren. You know, I think that mindset should remain with all of us, that we need to think not only for what's going on, but what is actually going to happen with our young people, with our grandchildren. And I really thank Lee and Betty, and I think I better quit.
Cheers, thank you. I don't know, kalastete kaya to. Yuan, okay. I just like to speak on like most everybody, about our children, our grandchildren. I grew up with my grandparents, my great-grandparents. I learned the Tlingit language before I spoke the English. So I grew up as we're all talking about our culture. Ha'aschayi, antekhat uwawat, atkrishi, chat, etka. When we go to school, me and my friends, they're raised by their grandparents too. Sometimes we probably went to school smelling like dry fish. Talk about growing up in a Tlingit home, culture. That's how I grew up. Achliskohas, astuqeitach ayahwa, guk Tlingit chenach yuqatank, katsuya Tlingit at chayi. Ach, that's young, my grandchildren, God bless them wherever they are. Even those down south, they know who they are. They have their Tlingit names, they know it. As our Siku, as the Tlingit Saye. They all know their Tlingit names and they're proud of it. I tell my daughter, you make sure, tell them to be proud of who they are. And she always says, Mom, they are, she says. Then she tells me when I call them, they all said, hi, Mom. That's Chankiyan. One of them, when I was down there visiting my daughter, he was still going to grade school. They were teaching them the native culture, Indian culture. And the teacher asked the class, he said, anybody here that's part Indian? And he raised his hand. And all his friends looked at him. No, you're not. He said, I am too. And when I came down to visit them, he asked his teacher if I could speak to the class. And she allotted me a half hour. He sat right next to me. He was so proud. I'm just so proud of him too. Telling the class, see, I told you. God bless them. So what we're talking about, I know, is our children, to know who they are, to be proud of it, their language, their culture. When I see the kids on stage, boy, I tell you, my heart just swells. So that's what it's all about, and that's what I'm for too. I'm glad that I saw all this before it was my time to go. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Who gets the mic? Okay. Thank you all for coming. I know there's somebody waiting outside the door.